We are talking about Walmart, the biggest retailer on the planet, and why more and more everyday shoppers are starting to feel like they need to double-check absolutely everything before they walk out of those sliding doors. Here is the deal. You head into Walmart for a quick run. Maybe you need some groceries for the week, a couple of household essentials, nothing fancy. But somewhere along the way, that simple trip turns into an obstacle course. You might have to track down an employee to unlock a display case. Then you scan all your own stuff at self-checkout. A camera overhead watches you while you do it. And just when you think you are finally done, someone at the exit wants to look at your receipt before you can actually leave the building. Sound familiar? If it does, you are definitely not alone. Thousands and thousands of shoppers have been sharing their experiences online, and a really interesting pattern has started to emerge. Customers are no longer just passively accepting whatever shows up on their receipts. They are pulling out their phones. They are snapping photos of shelf tags. They are weighing packages on their own. They are cross-referencing what they were charged against what they expected to pay. And in some cases, what they are discovering is raising some seriously uncomfortable questions. Now, let me be really clear right from the start. Finding one weird discrepancy on a grocery trip does not automatically mean that some massive corporate conspiracy is happening behind closed doors. Mistakes happen everywhere, in every store, in every industry. A mislabeled package could genuinely be a one-time production error. A shelf tag that does not match the register could be the result of a delayed update. These things are real, and they do occur, but here is where it gets interesting. When the same kinds of discrepancies keep popping up, across different products, different stores, and different parts of the country, the conversation shifts. It stops being about whether one particular package was wrong. It becomes about how many other things might have slipped through that nobody ever noticed because nobody thought to look. And that is really what today's video is about. This is not 10 separate little controversies. This is a much bigger story about what happens when trust between a store and its customers starts wearing thin from both directions. Shoppers are checking Walmart more closely than ever before. And at the same time, Walmart is checking shoppers more closely than ever before. So let us walk through the whole thing together, step by step, and you can decide for yourself what you think is going on. Part 1. When shoppers started playing detective. Let us kick things off with the moment that really set this whole conversation on fire. Early in 2026, a guy named Jimmy Rigg was doing what millions of us do every single week, browsing the refrigerated section at his local Walmart, picking up some meat for dinner. He grabbed a package of chicken, glanced at the label, and something just felt a little bit off to him. Now, most of us in that situation would probably shrug it off, toss the chicken in the cart, and keep moving. That is the normal thing to do, right? You look at the package, you see a weight, you see a price, and you trust that those numbers are accurate. You have 100 other things on your mind. Maybe you just got off a long shift at work. Maybe the kids are waiting at home. Maybe you still have to figure out what you are actually cooking tonight. The last thing on your to-do list is hauling a package of poultry over to the produce scale, like some kind of grocery store private investigator. But that is exactly what Jimmy Rigg decided to do. He picked up that package of chicken and carried it across the store to the scale near the fruits and vegetables. And honestly, that small decision is what makes this whole story so fascinating. Because it tells us something really important about where we are right now as consumers. Think about it for a second. When was the last time you personally felt the need to independently verify the weight printed on a package of meat? For most of us, the answer is probably never. We have always just assumed that those labels were correct. That is how the system is supposed to work. The store puts a number on the package and we take it at face value. It is a tiny act of trust that happens millions of times every single day in grocery stores all across the country, and nobody really thinks twice about it. So the fact that a customer actually stopped, felt uncertain enough to walk to a scale and physically check the weight, that alone tells you something has changed in how people feel about their shopping experience. Something in the air has shifted. The automatic trust that used to be baked into a routine grocery trip is not as automatic as it used to be. And of course, one package having an issue does not mean every single item in the store is wrong. Let us be fair about that. A single discrepancy is not proof of anything deliberate. It could be a manufacturing glitch, a calibration problem, or just plain human error somewhere along the supply chain. Jumping to huge conclusions from one data point would not be responsible. But trust in retail does not usually crumble all at once because of some massive headline-grabbing scandal. It erodes slowly, gradually, through a bunch of smaller moments. One time you glance at a label and something looks a little off. One time you wonder if the price you just paid was really the price you saw on the shelf. One time you decide to actually verify something instead of just taking it on faith. And once you start checking, it becomes really hard to stop. If you are finding this interesting so far, do me a quick favor. Smash that like button, drop a comment below telling me if you have ever double-checked a price at Walmart, and if you are new here, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. All right, let us keep going. Part 2. What the scale actually showed. So Jimmy Rigg puts that package of chicken on the scale, and the numbers he gets back are not even close to what the label says. The package was labeled at 466 pounds. That is what the sticker on the front said. That is the weight the price was calculated from. But when Rigg set it down on the store scale, the reading came in at roughly 2.37 pounds. Let that sink in for a moment. We are not talking about the package being a couple of ounces lighter than what was printed on the label. We are talking about a gap of more than 2 full pounds. That is enormous. If you have ever held 2 pounds of anything in your hand, you know that is a significant amount of weight to just be missing from a package. But the weight discrepancy is only half of what makes this so eye-opening. Let us follow the money, because that is where it really hits home for the average shopper. The total price on that package of chicken was $19.20, calculated at roughly $4.20 per pound, based on the labeled weight of 4.66 pounds. But if the actual weight was closer to 2.37 pounds, then the math says the customer was being asked to pay about $9.44 more than what the contents of the package were actually worth. Nearly $10 extra on a single package of chicken. That is not loose change. That is the kind of difference that would make just about anyone stop and say, "Hold on, what is going on here?" Now, before we go any further down this road, I want to give Jimmy Rigg credit for doing something that a lot of people in his position might have skipped. Before questioning Walmart's labels, he checked the scale itself. He placed a known 2-pound weight on it and verified the reading. The scale was off by only about 0.02 pounds. Basically nothing. That detail matters a lot because if you are going to use a tool to question someone else's accuracy, you had better make sure your own tool is telling the truth first. With the scale confirmed as reliable, Rigg kept going. He picked up a Kentucky Legend ham. The label on that package said 5.34 pounds. The scale? It came in somewhere between 2.14 and 2.25 pounds. Once again, the label was showing more than double what the product actually weighed. And here is where things started to snowball in a way that really caught people's attention. It was not just the size of the gap between the label and the scale that was so alarming. It was how quickly Rigg was finding more and more examples. During one pass through the Kentucky Legend products, he said he spotted 2 problematic packages in about 20 seconds. Half a minute later, that count had already climbed to 3. He also did not limit himself to one store. The videos that went viral showed Rigg visiting 3 entirely separate Walmart locations, and at each one, he kept finding packages where the printed weight and the scale reading told 2 completely different stories. At that point, the nature of the question completely changes. It is no longer just, "Hey, was there something funky about that first package of chicken?" It becomes, if he keeps pulling items off the shelf and putting them on scales, how many more is he going to find? Let me add something important here, though. These viral demonstrations clearly show a discrepancy between 2 numbers. They show what the label says and what the scale says. But showing a discrepancy is not the same thing as proving that someone did it on purpose. These videos do not prove that Walmart intentionally created those incorrect labels. They do not prove that some person in a back office somewhere was deliberately inflating weights to squeeze extra money out of customers. What they do, however, is make an explanation necessary. There is a label with a number on it. There is a scale with a different number on it. There is basic arithmetic that anyone with a calculator can do. There are multiple packages across multiple stores, and all of that is now captured on video for millions of people to see. So the obvious next question becomes, where exactly did the error originate? Because at this point in the story, there was still a perfectly reasonable possibility sitting right there. Maybe the problem had nothing to do with Walmart at all. Maybe it started before those packages ever arrived at the store. Maybe it happened at the supplier level, on the production line, in the facility where the meat was weighed and labeled before it was shipped out. And then something really interesting happened. The supplier itself actually stepped forward and said something. Part 3. The manufacturer speaks up. This is where the story graduated from social media drama to something with real corporate accountability attached to it. Kentucky Legend, the company that makes those hams, officially responded to what was being shown in the viral videos. On January 25, 2026, Kentucky Legend released a statement confirming that they had identified a price labeling error that affected a limited batch of their brown sugar quarter hams. According to their own internal investigation, the pricing mistake occurred during a production window of approximately 5 minutes on a single production date. The company said they had immediately reinforced their processes and tightened up their quality safeguards to make sure nothing like it would happen again. Now, there is a really crucial detail that a lot of people missed when this story was first making the rounds. The error that Kentucky Legend confirmed in that initial statement involved a Walmart location in Commerce, Georgia. That was not the same store where Jimmy Rigg had filmed his videos. In other words, the manufacturer's first public acknowledgement confirmed that yes, a real labeling error had genuinely occurred, but it did not directly explain the specific packages that had gone viral on social media. Then, about a month later, on February 25th, Kentucky Legend came back with a second statement. This time, the company went a bit further. They acknowledged that a limited number of both quarter hams and half hams had weight discrepancies. They said the affected products had been pulled from Walmart shelves, and they committed to strengthening their quality controls while taking responsibility for making things right with any customers who had been impacted. This is a point that really needs to be separated out carefully, because it is easy to blur the lines here. The supplier confirming that they made an error on their production line does not mean that Walmart's corporate headquarters sat in a boardroom and decided to intentionally slap wrong weights on packages. If the problem genuinely originated at the packing facility, if the machine that weighs the ham or generates the label malfunctioned, then the responsibility for creating that incorrect label sits with the manufacturer, not the retailer. But here is the thing that matters from the customer's perspective. The average person shopping at Walmart does not know anything about Kentucky Legend's production line. They have never seen the weighing machine. They have no idea where the label gets printed or what quality checks are supposed to happen before the product ships. All they know is that they are standing inside a Walmart store looking at a package sitting in a Walmart refrigerated case, and they are about to pay Walmart money for it. Walmart is the last link in the chain before the money leaves the customer's pocket. So the question naturally evolves beyond just who printed the wrong weight. It becomes whose responsibility is it to make sure that every product sitting on a Walmart shelf is accurate before a customer picks it up and pays for it. Walmart's official response was that the affected Kentucky Legend products had been removed from stores and that customers who had purchased them could bring them back for a full refund. That is a reasonable step, but it still left a noticeable gap in the story. When journalists and commentators asked about the chicken and prime rib that Rigg had also filmed, products that were not made by Kentucky Legend, Walmart did not offer a specific explanation for those particular cases. So we ended up in this situation where part of the mystery had a confirmed answer. Kentucky Legend acknowledged their error, described what went wrong, and said they were fixing it. But the other parts of what showed up on the scale, the non-Kentucky Legend products, remained unexplained. One piece of the puzzle snapped into place. The rest of the puzzle was still scattered on the table. Hey, quick pause. If you are enjoying this deep dive, please take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you do not miss any future videos. And drop a like too. It seriously makes a huge difference for the algorithm. Okay, back to it. Part 4. The $45 million settlement that was already in the background. Now, if the weight discrepancies in early 2026 had been the very first time questions about weighted groceries at Walmart had ever come up, the story might have stopped with the Kentucky Legend explanation. People might have said, okay, the supplier messed up, they admitted it, they fixed it, case closed. But that is not what happened, because there was already a massive legal case involving weighted groceries at Walmart sitting right there in the recent past. It was called Cucurinos versus Wal-Mart Inc., and it was a class action lawsuit that covered a time period running from October 19, 2018, all the way through January 19, 2024. The case involved certain weighted items, meat, poultry, pork, seafood, and bagged citrus, purchased directly at Walmart stores. The core allegation in the lawsuit was that for some purchases in those product categories, customers ended up paying more than the lowest price that was advertised in the store. The claims also touched on how certain weighted products were priced, how discounted items near their expiration dates were handled, and some issues with bagged citrus. And then the case arrived at a number that is genuinely difficult to brush aside. Walmart agreed to put $45 million into a settlement fund to resolve the litigation. $45 million. That is a staggering amount of money, and it is the kind of figure that tends to stick in people's minds long after the details of the case have faded. But, and this is really important, I need to be very direct about what that settlement does and does not mean. Walmart denied wrongdoing throughout the entire process. The court did not issue a ruling that said Walmart was guilty. The court did not find that the plaintiff's allegations had been proven to be true. What happened is that both sides agreed to settle the case to avoid the enormous expense, unpredictability, and risk that comes with taking something like this all the way through a full trial. Settlements like this happen all the time in major litigation. A company can look at the numbers and decide that paying a settlement is less costly and less risky than spending years in court, even if they believe they would ultimately win. So agreeing to settle is not the same thing as admitting fault. That distinction really does matter. I also want to point out that the Cucurinos case and the viral scale tests from 2026 are not exactly the same thing. The new videos are comparing the weight printed on a label to what shows up on a scale. The class action was focused on alleged pricing practices involving certain weighted items and bagged citrus. Different mechanisms, different specifics, but what the two situations absolutely share is that they both put shoppers face to face with the same fundamental question. When you buy something sold by weight at Walmart, are the numbers attached to that product actually leading to the amount you think you are paying? And the timing of everything made it nearly impossible for shoppers to keep the two stories separate in their minds. The deadline to file a claim in the Cucurinos settlement had passed in 2024. Most of the approved payments were distributed to class members in late 2025. But some payment complications, reissues, and administrative loose ends were still being handled well into 2026. That means when the new viral videos about meat weights started spreading like wildfire across social media in early 2026, the dust from the old lawsuit had not even fully settled yet. The checks were practically still in people's mailboxes. Does the old case prove the new allegations? Absolutely not. History does not automatically repeat itself, and a past settlement does not constitute evidence of a current problem. But it does shape how people receive new information. Context matters enormously. A shopper does not need to remember every legal detail of the Cucurinos case. They do not need to know the case number or the name of the plaintiff's attorney. All they need to remember is the general feeling. Didn't Walmart just pay tens of millions of dollars to settle something about weighted groceries? That single piece of background knowledge is enough to make any new discrepancy feel much harder to write off as a coincidence. It is the difference between hearing about a problem for the first time and hearing about it again. The first time, you give the benefit of the doubt. The second time, the doubt gets louder. There is also a broader pattern worth thinking about here that goes beyond just Walmart. Major retailers across the country have faced similar allegations involving weighted goods and pricing accuracy over the years. Kroger, Whole Foods, and other chains have all dealt with lawsuits or regulatory actions related to overcharging on products sold by weight. This is not a problem unique to one company. It appears to be a systemic vulnerability in how weighted products move through the supply chain from producer to retail shelf. The scales used in production, the software that generates labels, the logistics of transporting perishable goods across thousands of miles. Every single step in that process is a potential point of failure. When the system works perfectly, the customer never notices. When it does not work perfectly, the customer pays for someone else's mistake, often without ever realizing it. What makes the Walmart situation particularly high profile is simply the scale of the company. Walmart serves approximately 240 million customers per week across its global operations. Even if the error rate is extremely low, say, a fraction of 1% of all weighted products, the sheer volume means that the absolute number of affected transactions could still be enormous. A tiny percentage of a gigantic number is still a big number. And here is an additional layer that does not get talked about enough. Class action settlements, even massive ones, often do not feel very satisfying to the individual consumer. If the total fund is $45 million, but it gets divided among hundreds of thousands or even millions of eligible class members, each person might receive a relatively modest check. The company pays a large sum in aggregate, but any given shopper might look at their portion and think, that barely covers what I probably lost. It can feel like the system resolved the issue on paper without really making the individual whole. And that lingering sense of incompleteness can make people even more vigilant the next time something suspicious comes along. Quick reminder, friends, if you have not already, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also share this with anyone you know who shops at Walmart, because honestly, this is stuff everyone should be aware of. Alright, onward. Part 5. when the shelf price and the register price do not match. Now let us shift gears from weight to price, because overcharging by weight is only one way a customer can end up paying more than they expected. The second way is actually even sneakier, because this time the package can be perfectly fine. The weight can be spot on, the label can be completely accurate, but when you get to the register, the number that comes up on the screen is different from the number you saw on the shelf. Think about how most of us shop. You are walking through the aisle, you see something you need. You look at the little tag on the shelf edge, note the price, and based on that number you make your decision. Yeah, that is worth it. Or, nah, I will skip it this time. Then you toss it in the cart and move on. You get to checkout. The item scans, beep, and the price the register shows is 50 cents more than what you saw on the shelf. Now, this is not the same as something being expensive. If a box of cereal is marked at $8 on the shelf, and the register also says $8, that is just the price of cereal. You might think $8 is too much for cereal, and honestly, fair point. But at least you knew what you were signing up for before you put it in your cart. The problem comes when you see $6.99 on the shelf, but get charged $7.49 at the register. The issue there is not affordability, it is certainty. You made a purchasing decision based on one number, and then you were charged a different number. The shelf price was essentially a promise, and the register broke it. This might sound like small potatoes, but the Khan versus Walmart case really illustrates why even small amounts matter more than you might think. According to the allegations that were described in the opinion from the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, a shopper named Yoram Khan purchased 15 items at a Walmart in Niles, Illinois. His pre-tax total came to $27.69. After he paid and left the register, he did something most of us rarely bother with. He actually went back and compared his receipt against the shelf prices. What he found was that 6 of those 15 items had allegedly been charged higher than the price displayed on the shelf. The markups were in the range of about 10 to 15%, and the total alleged overcharge across all 6 items came out to just $1.89. $1.89. That is it. That is the number at the center of this case. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Seriously? $1.89? That is what this is about? But actually, the smallness of that number is precisely what makes the whole thing so relatable and so troubling. On a 27.69 cents total, $1.89 represents almost 7% of the bill. If that same ratio held up across a year's worth of weekly grocery trips, you are looking at potentially dozens of extra dollars quietly leaking out of your budget. Not because you chose to spend that money, not because prices went up and you accepted it, but because the number on the shelf and the number at the register were not the same and you did not catch it. Because let us be honest, how many of us actually check? How many of us take the time to walk back through the store after paying and compare every item on the receipt to the tag on the shelf? Almost nobody does that. You are juggling bags, maybe wrangling kids, trying to get to your car before the ice cream melts. The idea of spending another 15 minutes auditing your receipt sounds exhausting. And if you do notice a small discrepancy, you might look at the customer service line, look at the clock, and think, you know what? It is not worth my time to stand in line over $2. That is a perfectly rational decision, but it also means the overcharge just slides by unchallenged. And if it keeps happening on multiple trips, those little amounts that are not worth your time to contest individually start adding up to an amount that is very much worth worrying about collectively. At the lower court level, one of the arguments presented was that the customer could always check their receipt after paying and discover the mismatch. Basically, the idea was that the receipt acts as a corrective mechanism. Sure, the shelf price might have been wrong, but you will see the real number on the receipt, so no harm done. But the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals did not agree with that reasoning. The court's position was that just because a customer can discover the mistake after the transaction does not automatically make the inaccurate shelf price harmless. In plain language, the fact that you might catch the error later does not mean it was okay to show you the wrong number in the first place. The appeals court also did not rule that Walmart was liable. What the 2024 decision did was allow the claims to move forward instead of getting thrown out at an early stage. So the legal question remained open. And the story did not stop with just that one shopping trip in Illinois. Khan's legal team reported that they had checked additional Walmart stores across 6 different states: Illinois, Florida, Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York, and found similar patterns of shelf prices not matching register prices. The court's opinion also referenced enforcement actions in North Carolina. Two Walmart stores had been fined in 2021 for repeated scanning errors that resulted in customers being overcharged. And in February 2022, 5 additional stores in the state had to pay more than $15,000 in combined fines for similar issues. Here is another angle that deserves attention. Price accuracy laws vary quite a bit from state to state. In some states, there are specific statutes that require the price scanned at the register to match the lowest displayed price. In others, the rules are more relaxed or enforcement is minimal. What this means is that depending on where you live, you might have more or less legal recourse if you catch a discrepancy. But regardless of the legal framework in your particular state, the fundamental consumer experience is the same everywhere. You trusted a number, you got charged a different number, and the difference quietly came out of your pocket. When you add all of this together, a picture emerges. A shelf tag is something you look at for maybe 2 or 3 seconds. The register beep happens even faster. Then you get handed a long receipt filled with abbreviated item names and numbers, and you walk away. In order to catch even a single pricing discrepancy, you would need to remember the exact shelf price, pay close attention while every item scans, and then go back and cross-reference the receipt line by line. In other words, catching a mistake requires you to essentially audit the entire transaction yourself. The store is not going to flag it for you. The system is not going to pop up a warning that says, "Hey, this item scanned at a different price than what was on the shelf." The only way you find out is if you personally do the detective work. And that brings us to a really interesting turning point in this whole story. Because so far, we have been talking about customers checking Walmart, customers reweighing meat, customers comparing shelf tags to receipts, customers pulling out their phones and documenting what they find. But the checking does not only go in one direction. While customers are scrutinizing Walmart, Walmart is also scrutinizing customers. And the place where you feel that most directly is at self-checkout. Loving the conversation so far? Go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe if you have not yet. It takes literally 1 second, and it means the world to me. Also, tell me in the comments, have you ever caught a price mismatch at checkout? I would love to hear your stories. Let us keep rolling. Part 6, Self-Checkout. Do the work, then prove you did it right. Self-checkout was supposed to be the great convenience upgrade. Instead of waiting behind someone with a cart full of groceries while a cashier scans everything, you just step up to a machine and do it yourself. Scan, bag, pay, done. Quick and easy. And honestly, a lot of people genuinely like the concept. There is something satisfying about being in control of your own checkout experience. You go at your own pace. You bag things the way you want. You do not have to make small talk if you are not in the mood. For a simple trip, a few items, in and out, self-checkout can be legitimately faster and more convenient. But right in the middle of that model is a paradox that is hard to ignore once you see it. The entire premise of self-checkout is that the store trusts you enough to handle the scanning and payment process on your own. But the system is simultaneously designed to verify that you actually did it correctly. Take a look at the terms of service for something like Walmart Plus Scan and Go. Customers agree to scan items accurately. Walmart reserves the right to inspect items in your cart, review your proof of purchase, check specific items, require you to rescan things, or recalculate your total if something seems off. These are not hidden clauses buried in fine print. They are part of how the system is explicitly designed to work. And look, from a business perspective, this makes complete sense. Self-checkout systems do deal with real problems. People accidentally miss items. Barcodes do not always scan properly. Some people intentionally try to game the system. Shrinkage, the industry term for inventory loss from theft, errors, and damage, is a genuine financial concern for retailers. Having verification steps built into the process is a rational business decision. But understanding why the system works this way does not change how it feels to be on the receiving end of it. Survey data helps paint the picture. A study of roughly 1,000 consumers found that 55% of shoppers actually wanted more self-checkout options available to them. At the same time, 44% of those surveyed said that checkout methods without direct employee assistance ranked among the most frustrating parts of their shopping experience. Those two numbers are not contradictory. They actually tell a really coherent story. People like the idea of self-checkout. They like the autonomy and the potential speed. What they do not like is when that autonomy gets undercut by layers of verification that make the process feel slower and more complicated than it was supposed to be. An experience shared online in August 2026 put a fine point on this tension. One Walmart customer described arriving at a store where no regular cashier-operated lanes were open. None. The only option available was self-checkout. So this person switched to Walmart Plus Scan and Go and spent the time to individually scan approximately 80 items. 80 items. That is not a quick in and out trip. That is a full weekly grocery haul. After scanning every single item, they got flagged for a random cart check. Now, I want to be fair here. This was one person's experience at one particular store. It is not proof that every Walmart everywhere has eliminated staffed checkout lanes. Walmart has publicly stated that customers can choose staffed lanes when they are available. But here is the thing. When they are available is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. If you walk into a store and every cashier lane is dark, the theoretical option to use a staffed lane does not help you very much in that moment. Your choice becomes self-checkout or leaving without your groceries. And if you choose self-checkout, do all the scanning work yourself that a paid employee would normally handle and then get stopped for a verification check afterward. The value proposition of convenience starts to feel pretty hollow. You just performed unpaid labor for the store, and then the store checked your work. The employee conducting the cart check is not the problem, by the way. I want to be really clear about that. They are just doing their job. They did not design the self-checkout system. They did not write the policies. They are following instructions from people who are several levels above them on the org chart. Directing frustration at the frontline worker is misplaced and unfair. The frustration that customers feel is with the system itself, a system that asks you to do more while simultaneously signaling that it does not fully trust you to have done it right. There is also the question of what happens when technology fails during self-checkout. Machines freeze. Barcode scanners misread items. The weight sensor on the bagging area flags a false alarm and locks the entire terminal until an employee comes over to enter an override code. If you have ever stood at a self-checkout kiosk with a flashing red light and a screen that says, "Please wait for assistance," you know exactly how awkward and frustrating that moment is. You did nothing wrong, but everyone behind you is now staring at you while you wait for a worker to come fix a problem that the machine created. In those moments, the efficiency that self-checkout was supposed to deliver completely evaporates, and the customer is left feeling both helpless and vaguely embarrassed. And here is a subtle psychological cost that rarely gets discussed. When you use a staff checkout lane, you are a customer being served. You are the person whose needs are being attended to. But when you use self-checkout, the dynamic flips. You become the operator. You are performing a task, and when the system then checks your work, the implied message is not, "Thank you for shopping with us." It is, "Let us make sure you did your job correctly." That is a fundamentally different emotional experience, even if the practical outcome is the same. There is another dimension to this that deserves mention. Self-checkout changes the error dynamic in a way that is worth thinking about. When a cashier scans your items and makes a mistake, charges you for the wrong item, double scans something, misapplies a coupon, that is clearly the store's error. But when you are the one scanning and you accidentally miss an item or scan the wrong barcode, whose error is that? The line gets blurry, and that blurriness can put the customer in an uncomfortable position if a verification check turns up a discrepancy. And the checking does not always stop at the self-checkout kiosk. Sometimes it follows you all the way to the exit. Part 7. Receipt checks. The transaction is over, but is it really? The screen says payment successful. The money has already left your account. The receipt prints out. You fold it up, drop it in one of your bags, and start pushing your cart toward the exit. In your mind, the shopping trip is done. Transaction complete. Time to go home. And then, just a few steps from the door, an employee asks to see your receipt. For the store, this might be a straightforward loss prevention measure. It is a quick verification step designed to make sure that what is in the cart matches what was paid for. Retailers have been doing variations of receipt checks for decades, and there is a legitimate business rationale behind it. But for a lot of customers, especially in the context of everything else we have been talking about, it creates a specific kind of emotional friction. You just went through the entire checkout process. You scanned your items, or a cashier scanned them for you. You paid. You received confirmation that the payment went through. And now, before you can actually leave the building with the things you just purchased, you are being asked to prove that those items are legitimately yours. A post from August 2026 captured that sentiment perfectly. A shopper wrote about how tired they were of feeling like they needed to prove they were not a thief after standing in line, paying their bill, and trying to leave the store. That is only one person's perspective, and it certainly does not represent how every Walmart customer feels. But it illustrates why receipt checks hit differently than other forms of verification. The receipt check happens after the transaction. In the shopper's mind, the deal is done. The store has their money. The merchandise has been paid for. Being stopped at that point can feel less like a routine security measure and more like an accusation, even if that is not the intent. And I want to reiterate, the employee at the door is not the villain in this scenario. They are doing a job they were assigned. They did not create the store's loss prevention policies. They probably did not volunteer for door duty. Getting upset at them is like getting mad at a parking meter for charging you. They are just the mechanism, not the decision maker. But the cumulative experience, scan your own items, get checked at the kiosk, get checked again at the door, creates a feeling that is hard to shake. And when you combine that with the first half of our story, where customers are discovering weight discrepancies and pricing mismatches, you get a picture where both sides are watching each other with increasing intensity. Customers are checking Walmart to make sure they are paying the correct amount. Walmart is checking customers to make sure merchandise has been paid for. Both sides are essentially saying the same thing to each other. I need to verify that you held up your end of the deal. There is actually a psychological concept that is relevant here. When people feel that they are being treated with suspicion, they tend to become more suspicious in return. Trust begets trust, but suspicion also begets suspicion. When a customer feels like the store does not trust them, they are more likely to start questioning whether they can trust the store. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. That is what makes this bigger than any individual receipt check or any single pricing error. It is a relationship dynamic between the retailer and its customers. And right now, that dynamic is under significant strain from both directions. And for some shoppers, the frustration does not even begin at checkout. It starts earlier, much earlier, when they cannot even get their hands on the product they came to buy. Hey, we are deep into this one, and I appreciate you sticking with me. Please take a second to like and subscribe if you have not already. Also, share this video. The more people who see it, the more informed shoppers there are out there. All right. Let us talk about locked cases. Part 8. Locked cases. The product is right there, but you cannot have it here, is a scenario that is becoming painfully common. You walk into Walmart because you need one specific thing. Maybe it is a phone charger. Maybe it is a razor. Maybe it is a pack of allergy medicine. You know exactly what you want, and you know exactly where it is in the store. You walk to the right aisle. You find the right shelf. And there it is, sitting right behind a locked plexiglass case. You cannot reach it. You cannot grab it and go. You press the call button mounted on the case, the one that is supposed to summon an employee to come unlock it for you. And then you wait, and wait. An employee walks by, but they do not have the key, or they are heading to deal with something else. Or the call button apparently did not alert anyone in the first place. You press it again, still waiting. A shopping trip that should have taken you 3 minutes is now stretching toward 10, maybe 15, maybe more. In March 2026, a Walmart customer shared their experience of trying to buy a pack of car cleaning wipes. The product cost roughly $3. $3. It was right there on the shelf, clearly in stock, at a price the customer was perfectly willing to pay. But it was locked behind a case, and the customer said they waited nearly 10 minutes for someone to come open it. Think about that math for a moment. 10 minutes of a person's day to buy a $3 item. Most people value their time at more than 18 cents per minute. The wait itself cost more than the product was worth. Another case from July 2026 was even more dramatic. A customer reported waiting approximately 30 minutes, asking multiple employees for help, and eventually having to team up with other frustrated shoppers who were also waiting for the same case to be opened before someone finally showed up with the key. Now, these are individual anecdotes. They are not representative of the average experience at every Walmart store everywhere. I do not want to pretend that every single person who encounters a locked case waits half an hour. That would not be accurate. But the pattern that these stories illustrate is a very real contradiction. The item is technically in stock. It is physically present on the shelf. The store has it, and the customer wants to buy it. But for the customer standing in that aisle, the product might as well be on the moon. It is available in theory, but inaccessible in practice. Locked cases exist for legitimate reasons. Certain categories of products are disproportionately targeted by shoplifters. Razor blades, electronics accessories, certain over-the-counter medications, and other small but valuable items have high theft rates. Locking them up reduces shrinkage, which is a real and significant cost for retailers. But the challenge arises when the security measure creates such a high barrier for the legitimate customer that it starts undermining the sale itself. Because the person standing in front of that locked case is not trying to steal anything, they are trying to give Walmart money, and they cannot. A story from November 2025 really drives this point home. A customer said they waited about 25 minutes trying to get 2 items from locked cases. After all that time, nobody came to help. So the customer left. And they did not just leave without the locked items. They abandoned their entire cart, including all the unlocked items they had already planned to buy. That is the moment when the calculation flips. A loss prevention measure that was designed to protect the store's inventory ended up costing the store an entire transaction. The products that were locked up did not get stolen. Success on the shrinkage side, but the products that were freely available did not get purchased either. The store did not lose the locked merchandise, but it did lose a paying customer. And it is not just the store that loses. The employees get stuck in an impossible position too. They might be in the middle of helping someone in a different department. They might be stocking shelves on a tight schedule. They might simply not be authorized to open that particular case. The worker is not deliberately ignoring the customer. They are navigating a system that does not always have enough people in the right places at the right times. The range of products being locked up has also expanded significantly in recent years. It used to be mostly high-value electronics and certain health and beauty items. Now, depending on the store and the neighborhood, you might find locked cases around laundry detergent, baby formula, deodorant, socks, and even basic grocery staples. When the locked case strategy expands to cover items that feel ordinary and inexpensive, the customer's sense of absurdity grows proportionally. Waiting 10 minutes for someone to unlock a $60 video game feels inconvenient, but at least somewhat understandable. Waiting 10 minutes for someone to unlock a $4 stick of deodorant feels like something has gone fundamentally wrong with the shopping experience. Some stores have experimented with alternative approaches, like placing high-theft items behind the customer service counter or using alarmed spider wraps instead of locked cases. Others have tried reducing the number of locked items and absorbing a higher shrinkage rate as a cost of doing business, essentially betting that the increased sales from a frictionless experience will outweigh the losses from theft. Whether any of these alternatives will gain traction at scale remains to be seen, but the experimentation itself tells you that retailers are aware the locked case model has real downsides. There is also a customer psychology element worth mentioning. Every minute a shopper spends waiting in front of a locked case, they are mentally recalculating whether this purchase is worth the hassle. And many of them are simultaneously realizing that they could just pull out their phone and order the same item from Amazon for roughly the same price, with delivery to their front door and zero waiting. The locked case does not just create friction for this particular shopping trip. It trains the customer to think, next time I will just order it online. And once that habit forms, the store has not just lost today's sale, it has potentially lost that customer's future purchases in that category as well. So while locked cases might look like a simple theft prevention tool, they are actually sitting at the intersection of several competing pressures: security needs, staffing limitations, customer expectations, and the ever-present competition from online retail. And when the balance tips too far towards security at the expense of the shopping experience, the result can be a customer who never needed to steal anything but still ends up leaving the store without buying anything. Part 9. Electronic shelf labels. Faster updates. New questions. While some products are getting harder to physically access, the technology being used to display prices is moving in exactly the opposite direction, getting faster, more flexible, and more automated than ever before. Let us talk about electronic shelf labels, because this is a topic that is generating a lot of conversation and honestly, quite a bit of anxiety among shoppers. Instead of the traditional paper price tag that gets printed in a back office and manually stuck on a shelf rail by an employee, Walmart has been rolling out small digital screens that sit on the shelf edge and display the price electronically. These screens can be updated remotely. No one needs to walk through the store peeling off old stickers and replacing them with new ones. An approved price change can show up on the shelf within minutes. As of March 2026, Roughly 2,300 Walmart stores in the United States had already adopted electronic shelf labels, and the company announced plans to expand the technology across its entire chain within about the next year. That is a massive rollout. And the scale of the operational advantage is staggering when you think about it. A typical Walmart supercenter can carry upwards of 120,000 individual products. Thousands of prices change every single week due to promotions, cost adjustments, competitive responses, and seasonal shifts. Under the old paper system, keeping every price tag current was a huge logistical task that required significant labor hours. Many changes simply got delayed because there were not enough people to physically update all the tags fast enough. Electronic labels solve that problem almost entirely. A change that once took hours or even days can now be pushed through in minutes. That is a genuine operational improvement, and in theory, it should actually benefit customers by making sure the price on the shelf more accurately reflects what will ring up at the register. But the very capability that makes these labels useful is also what makes some shoppers uneasy. If prices can be changed that quickly and easily, what stops a store from raising prices during peak shopping hours when the store is packed? What stops them from bumping up the price of bottled water on a hot day or marking up snacks on a Super Bowl weekend? According to Walmart, those scenarios are not happening. The company has stated publicly that price changes using electronic shelf labels still require human approval. Changes are managed centrally, not at the individual store level. They are generally pushed out during non-peak hours. Prices remain stable throughout the business day, and Walmart explicitly says that prices do not fluctuate based on demand, time of day, or the identity of the shoppers in the store. If you take Walmart at their word, and based on how they have publicly described the current system, there is no evidence that electronic shelf labels are being used for the kind of real-time demand-based pricing that people are worried about. That is an important point. The fear might be running ahead of the reality. But here is where the irony kicks in, and it is significant. Walmart itself has talked about electronic shelf labels as a tool that improves accuracy. The company has said that these digital tags help make sure the shelf price matches the checkout price, and that this consistency helps build customer trust. Think about the timing of that message. A technology specifically positioned as a trust-building measure is arriving in stores at the exact same moment that customer trust around pricing accuracy is being questioned more intensely than it has been in years. The tool designed to help with the problem is rolling out right in the middle of the problem. Electronic shelf labels by themselves do not prove that anything wrong is happening. They are a neutral technology that can be used well or used poorly. The real question is not about the labels themselves, it is about whether customers trust the numbers being displayed on them. And in the current environment, where shoppers are already reweighing meat and cross-checking receipts, a price tag that can change at any moment without any visible human intervention is a hard sell from a trust perspective, regardless of how well-intentioned the technology might be. It is also worth considering what electronic shelf labels could mean during inflationary periods. When food prices are rising steadily, month after month, consumers are already sensitive to every dollar. A technology that makes price increases faster and easier to implement, even if those increases are legitimate responses to rising wholesale costs, can feel threatening to a consumer who is already watching their budget shrink. The label is not the cause of inflation, but it becomes the most visible symbol of how quickly prices can move. And in an environment where grocery bills are a major source of financial stress for millions of families, that visibility can amplify anxiety even when nothing improper is happening. There is also a broader conversation happening here about transparency. When a paper price tag changes, someone physically walks to the shelf and replaces it. It is a visible, tangible action. You might even see the employee doing it. With electronic labels, the change is invisible. The number on the screen simply becomes a different number, and unless you happen to be looking at it at that exact moment, you would never know it had changed. That invisibility, even if nothing inappropriate is happening, can feed uncertainty in a climate where customers are already feeling cautious. We are in the home stretch, friends. If this video has been eye-opening for you, please do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more content like this. And seriously, share it with your friends and family. Knowledge is power when it comes to being a smart shopper. Let us wrap this up. Part 10. If customers are so fed up, why is Walmart still growing? All right, So after everything we have just walked through, the weight discrepancies, the price mismatches, the self-checkout friction, the receipt checks, the locked cases, the electronic shelf labels, you might expect to hear that customers are abandoning Walmart in droves. You might expect to see plummeting sales numbers and empty parking lots, but that is not what the data shows, not even close. Financial results released on August 20th, 2026, painted a picture of a company that is very much still thriving. Total revenue was up 5.9% compared to the prior year. Walmart U.S. comparable store sales, excluding fuel, grew by 2.6%, and e-commerce sales surged by an impressive 24%. Those are not the numbers of a retailer in decline. Those are strong, healthy growth numbers by any standard. So what gives? If so many customers are frustrated, if trust is eroding, if people are filming themselves catching weight discrepancies and posting it for millions to see, why is Walmart still growing? The answer, I think, is more nuanced than a simple, people are fed up and leaving, or everything is fine. The truth lives somewhere in between, and it actually reveals something important about how consumer behavior actually works in the real world. Being frustrated with a store and stopping shopping at that store are two very different things. Walmart occupies a unique position in the American retail landscape. For millions of families, especially in rural areas and smaller towns, Walmart might be the only practical option for affordable groceries and household essentials. The nearest competitor could be 30 minutes away. The prices, despite all the questions we have been discussing, are often still lower than what you would find at other chains. So walking away from Walmart is not as simple as deciding you are unhappy with the experience. For many people, it would mean spending more money at another store, driving further, or both. The economic pressure to keep shopping at Walmart is real and powerful, even when the trust is strained. But, and this is the crucial but, the fact that people are still shopping at Walmart does not mean everything is fine from Walmart's perspective. Because there is a meaningful difference between a customer who shops at your store with full confidence and a customer who shops at your store while mentally auditing every step of the process. A shopper who still buys meat at Walmart but now eyeballs every package a little more carefully before putting it in the cart. A family that still picks up essentials at Walmart but has started shifting some of their purchases to a competitor or to online delivery. A customer who still walks through the front doors but has quietly moved from, "I trust this store," to, "I need to watch my back in this store." Walmart has not necessarily lost those customers. But it may have lost something that is much harder to recover once it is gone. Automatic, unquestioning trust. That is the thing about trust. You often do not notice when it starts to slip away, because the customer does not announce it. They do not file a complaint. They do not make a dramatic exit. They just start paying a little more attention. They start checking the scale. They start photographing the shelf tags. They start reviewing the receipt in the parking lot. And each time they do that, the relationship between the customer and the store gets a little more transactional and a little less trusting. There is also a generational dimension to this. Younger shoppers who have grown up with social media are far more likely to encounter viral videos about weight discrepancies or pricing errors. They are also more likely to share those videos with their own networks. The amplification effect means that even if only a small number of customers personally experience a problem, the awareness of the problem spreads to a much larger audience. And that awareness, once created, is very hard to reverse. This matters for Walmart's future because trust is, in many ways, the most important asset a retailer has. Price and convenience bring people in the door, but trust is what allows the transaction to happen smoothly, without friction, without the customer feeling like they need to independently verify every step. When trust is high, the shopping trip is fast, easy, and pleasant. When trust is low, the shopping trip becomes work. And Walmart is now in a position where it needs to do more than just say, "Trust us." It needs to demonstrate, through visible and verifiable actions, that the numbers are right, that the system is fair, and that the customer is not going to get quietly nickel and dimed at any step of the process. That is a tall order, but it is the reality of doing business in an era where every customer has a camera in their pocket and every discrepancy can go viral in a matter of hours. Wrapping it all up. So where does all of this leave us? If you step back and look at the full picture, this is not really a story about one bad package of chicken or one mislabeled ham. It is not about one price tag that did not match the register, or one frustrating wait in front of a locked case. It is a story about what happens when the small acts of trust that make everyday commerce possible start to erode. Every single grocery trip is built on dozens of tiny assumptions. You assume the weight on the label is correct. You assume the price on the shelf is what you will be charged. You assume that when you pay, the transaction is done. You assume that the products on the shelves are accessible to you. You assume that the store is playing fair. Most of the time, those assumptions are probably still correct. Most packages are probably accurately labeled. Most prices probably do match between the shelf and the register. Most shopping trips probably go perfectly fine. But probably is not what trust runs on. Trust runs on certainty. And when enough small doubts accumulate, a viral video here, a class action settlement there, a frustrating wait at a locked case, a receipt check that feels a little too much like an accusation, probably is not enough anymore. What we are watching play out right now is a two-way erosion of trust. Customers are checking Walmart because they are not sure the numbers are right. Walmart is checking customers because they are not sure the merchandise has been paid for. Both sides have their reasons. Both sides can justify their behavior. But the end result is a shopping experience that feels less like a partnership and more like an audit. And the real question going forward is whether that dynamic can be reversed. Can Walmart rebuild the kind of trust where a customer feels comfortable picking up a package of meat, reading the label, and putting it in their cart without a second thought? Can the shopping experience return to a place where the transaction feels complete when the payment goes through, without additional verification steps that make the customer feel like a suspect? I honestly do not know the answer, but I do know this: trust is a lot easier to lose than it is to rebuild. And right now, a lot of shoppers are standing in the grocery aisle, looking at a package of meat, glancing at the label, and then looking over at the scale. That look, that moment of hesitation, tells you everything you need to know about where things stand. Thank you so much for watching this entire video, friends. If you made it all the way to the end, you are a real one, and I seriously appreciate you. Please make sure to like this video, leave me a comment with your thoughts or your own Walmart experiences, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future content like this. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow and helps more people become informed, empowered shoppers. I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves out